Hi, and welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. So, today on the podcast, we are going to be hearing from an old episode, and aptly so, because the title of this past episode is It's Okay to Evolve. And as I'm recording this, it's with a very mixed bag of emotions that I'm recording this because I am taking a break from the podcast and podcasting in general. And I don't know if and when I will return to the podcast, but I feel that I have, had a great run. 3 years has been amazing. Showing up here most weeks, getting to engage with you guys. So much support, so much love, so much amazing feedback. And over time, podcast has, changed form in many different ways. And at the beginning of this summer, I was just kind of struggling with whether I should keep podcasting and whether, I have kind of met my quota, so to speak, of episodes. And when I first started this podcast, I did not anticipate that it would go for, 3 years as this has. And so I think that it's been incredibly challenging and amazing, and so many emotions, so many connections that I've made on here just by being willing to show up in podcast and talk about topics that, I feel affect all of us moms in healthcare in particular. And so yeah, it's not an easy decision to take this break for the unforeseeable future. I honestly don't know if I'll be back to podcasting, but I just wanted to sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support, for listening in every week, for just everything, all the feedback, all the critiques, everything that I've received from each and one of you. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And so I will still be, on social media for now. I am still working in my business, coaching all the moms and supporting all of y'all in your journey. It's just going to look different. The way I show up is going to look different because I won't be on the podcast every week. And I really, really want to tell you how much I appreciate your support and how much it's meant to me to be able to be the voice and provide the support and interview people on different topics that are near and dear to me and to all of us. And so it's not easy to end this. And I'm actually kind of feeling like, oh, I didn't want to record this, but I felt that I owed it to you, my listener, to let you know that the season of the episode has come to an end. The podcast has come to an end. And yeah, I really, 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 really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. Of course, I couldn't have done this without your support. I would not have been able to do this without the amazing, amazing Cassidy Mitchell, who has just been a force. She's kept me accountable. She's recorded episodes of this podcast and kept it sounding so amazing and so professional. And I, want to also take this moment to thank Cassidy for her support. And as sad as it is, I think all things, seasons change and I may return. I don't know. I don't want to say the podcast is over and goodbye. But for now, I want to focus my attention on serving my clients and connecting with people in person and connecting with people directly. And so I just want to say thank you and goodbye. So this last episode, like I said, is aptly named. It's an old episode. It's one of my favorites. And it talks about it's okay to evolve. And so this pivot for me as a mom and an entrepreneur, it's given me permission to just see other things that I could be doing and serving, moms and showing up in spaces that I maybe haven't had time or capacity to show up in. And so I really, really hope that you enjoy this final episode. And as always, if you would like to connect, you can email me at hello@stethoscopestoswaddles.com. And you can find me on Instagram at stethoscopes.2.swaddles, on Facebook as Shiro Bergbauer. And feel free to reach out. Let's stay connected. I really, really have been honored to be in your life and in your journeys, wherever that might be. And I truly, truly, truly am grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your support. And let's keep in touch. All right. Without any further ado, here's the final show before the curtain comes down. All right. Thank you so much. And always remember, you're enough and you belong. Bye. Hey, Mama. You deserve a life free of overwhelm and burnout. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I'm your host, life and mindset coach, Shiro Bergbauer. I'm also a wife, mom, and CRNA. This is the podcast for high achieving mamas in medicine like you and I. Together, we'll learn how to navigate the ups and downs of working motherhood. If you're looking to thrive in your relationships and overcome overwhelm in your motherhood, marriage, and medicine, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast, episode number 75. Today on the podcast, we are continuing the series that we started last week. And today I wanted to have a little segue to talk about why it is important for us to evolve and actually why it's important for us to give ourselves permission to evolve. So interestingly, I had come up with the topic prior to going on vacation, and I had really thought about, I'd mentioned in a previous episode as a past, like an ending thought about giving ourselves permission to evolve and why we should evolve. And then I had this like almost light bulb moment when I was traveling, and I'm going to share that with you in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about the definition of evolution. And then what we're going to do is kind of go into the tools that you want to bring with you as you evolve as a person. And it's not a, exhaustive, complete tool list. These are just some important ones to bring along the journey as you are evolving. And these are authenticity, self-leadership, self-awareness, and self-love. First, I'm going to tell you the definition of evolution, which is to develop gradually, especially from a simple form to a more complex form. And the heart of evolution is to develop, so to change, so there's growth. I saw this quote in Young Pueblo's book, and I don't remember if it's clarity or connection or inward, so I'm going to link both in the show notes. The first, it says, essentials for growth, proper rest, more learning, consistent honesty, building new habits, letting go of old stories, saying no to old patterns, believing that you can change, saying yes to supportive people, examining your emotional history, finding a place to heal past pain, and making time to build self-awareness. This really spoke to me because I have said on the podcast before how, when we are in a growth mindset, we have to be open to change, and that does not come easily from many people. So as I was traveling to Kenya, we had planned to have a little stopover in Istanbul. And what we realized was when we booked our flights, we did not think about the fact that it was a 10-hour layover. So my girlfriend and I were traveling. It was a mommy and me trip with our kids. She has one, I have one. And we decided we were going to do a tour of Istanbul. So we booked this amazing trip. And I'm actually going to link the company that we used because the guy that was our guide was amazing, just great customer service. If you're ever in Istanbul, you have to contact Sally. And this is not at all like a plug that he asked me to plug him. It was just we had a great experience. We arrived in Istanbul, super tired from a 11-hour flight. We went on a little tour of the city. So the city is about an hour maybe from the airport, the main city, the old city. And so we had the tour of the museums and went to a local market. And when we were in the Hagia Sophia, I had this moment when I realized how sometimes the universe sends you signs of what you've been trying to say or even trying to accept in your own life. In order for me to kind of bring that home, I'm going to tell you a brief history of the Hagia Sophia, and then I'll explain why that moment happened for me. So this Hagia Sophia is also called the Church of the Holy Wisdom or the Church of the Divine Wisdom. It was built during the Byzantine era, and it's one of the world's greatest monuments. It was built as a Christian church in the 6th century under the direction of the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I. In subsequent centuries, it became a mosque, a museum, and a mosque again. And it's a demonstration of the religious changes that have played out in the region over the centuries. And the interesting things is that inside the Hagia Sophia, there are minarets that have Islamic inscriptions and also Christian mosaics. The original church of the site of the Hagia Sophia had actually been ordered to be built by Constantine I in 321, 325 on the foundations of a pagan temple. Then his son consecrated it in 360. In 404, it was damaged by a fire that erupted during a riot following the second banishment of St. John Chrysostom, the then Patriarch of Constantinople. It was then rebuilt and enlarged by the Roman Emperor Constant I. The restored building was rededicated in 415, and then it was burned again in January of 532. Then Justinian I was like, you know what? I'm going to build a splendid replacement. The resultant church, which is kind of what we see today, was built in about 6 years and was completed in 537. Unusual for the period it was built, the names of the building's architect, Antithemis of Trellis and Isidorus of Miletus, are well known, as is their familiarity with mechanics and mathematics. The structure that now stands where we see the modern Hagia Sophia is essentially the 6th century edifice, although an earthquake caused a partial collapse of the dome in 558. There have been other collapsings of different areas, partial collapses. Anyway, it was restored again in the mid-14th century, and for more than a millennium, it was the cathedral of the church. And then in 1204, it was looted, and then it was rebuilt, and then it became a museum in the 20th century. And then about 2 years ago, in 2020, I believe, or 2019, it was turned back into a mosque. So the Hagia Sophia has not only burned down, had earthquakes like shatter its structure, it has also gone from being a pagan temple to a church, to a mosque, to a museum, and then again into a mosque. And why that was so important for me was that looking at this structure, this like monument, right, and realizing evolution, even for that structure, was inevitable. Over time, its function has changed. The circumstance has remained the same. The circumstance, that is the building on which it stands. What has changed is the thoughts that we have about it. So, in the time that it was a pagan temple, then we thought of it as a pagan temple, and then we thought of it as a church, and a mosque, and a museum again, and then as a mosque again, right? So taking that in mind and just giving ourselves permission to be aware that we too can evolve. We are not stuck to be who we've always been or the version of people that people think that we are, right? It's okay if you're changing and like peeling the layers of the onion of who you are and finding out who you truly are. I've mentioned here before, I was very much into self-help even when I didn't really understand self-help. And when I look back, I just realized that it was like the authentic version of me trying to find its way home. And I am not even sure that I am 100% of the person that I always wanted to be, which is why I think giving ourselves permission to evolve is so important. Giving ourselves permission for people to change their narrative of us and letting them be wrong about us. I think one of the biggest struggles that I have had over maybe the last 5 years is letting go of people's thoughts about me, letting go of the assumptions and what I think people want me to be, and just stepping into my authentic self. I'm going to share a quote by Brené Brown as I start talking about authenticity, which is one of the tools I think is super important when you are evolving. Brené Brown says, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. Choosing authenticity means cultivating the courage to be imperfect, to set boundaries, and to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Exercising the compassion that comes from knowing that we are all made of strength and struggle, and nurturing the connection and sense of belonging that can only happen when we believe that we are enough. Authenticity demands wholehearted living and loving, even when it's hard, even when we're wrestling with the shame and fear of not being good enough, and especially when the joy is so intense that we're afraid to let ourselves feel it. Mindfully practicing authenticity during our most soul-searching struggles is how we invite grace, joy, and gratitude into our lives. So the first thing I think we have to bring with us is the idea of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we truly are. So when I went on my trip to Kenya with my daughter, one of the interesting things for me was that I just didn't have like major plans. I had just planned to spend time with my best friend and my girlfriend who we traveled with and, their families and do all these things. And I was sitting one night, I was having a conversation with my best friend's mom. And I just like had this moment where I was like, this is who I truly am. And like, I have never had to be who I'm not in front of these people. I've never had to be performative. I have never had to adjust and bend over and contort myself to be liked by them. I just was like always aware that I was liked and loved by them. And as we were speaking, one of the things that was interesting to me is that, for example, how many facets of our lives we form as people and how that changes over time. So again, I mean, I've known my best friend's mom since I was 13 years old. And so she's seen me evolve through being a teenager, being a young woman, being a mother, being a wife. She's seen all those facets of me. And yet she truly sees me for who I am. She truly gets it. And like we can have like conversations now at the adult level that maybe we didn't have when I was 13, right? And so like just being given permission to be open, to be authentic to who I truly am and embrace it. But it also means that I had to show up in a way that I could just be vulnerable. And I was always like knowing that I was enough. Like there was never a doubt. Like, am I good enough? Am I loved enough? Never a doubt, right? When I think of something else that Brene Brown said in the past, it's helped me really clarify something about authenticity. And that is the idea that sometimes when you start really living and embracing who you truly are, there may be people in your life that are not comfortable with it. And you have to be okay with that, right? When you start to change, for example, and maybe people who you connected with in ways that were not healthy for you. Like, I'll just use an example, like maybe people who you only hang out with to go drinking or to just talk about other people or, to, I don't know, like something that wasn't healthy and you knew it inherently. When you start to like separate yourself from that, there will always be some sort of protest from those people, and it may be overt or covert, right? And you have to be open to that. You have to be okay with maybe they're not coming along on the journey forward, right? As much as we want to bring those people with us, maybe they don't belong in the next chapter. And that awareness and that acceptance is so important in evolving. Because when you have that self-compassion and when you have the embracing of like being imperfect and showing up as who you really are, you're okay with being alone on the bus, right? You're okay with being alone on the path because you're not living life on other people's terms anymore. The second component of being okay with evolving is self-leadership. And self-leadership calls for us to really understand and trust our intuition and then courageously follow the guidance of our intuition. It's knowing that when your intuition shows you that you belong in certain spaces or you don't belong in certain spaces, being clear and listening to your intuition. The concept of like no gods, no gurus, like maybe you have been listening to the works of one person and suddenly that doesn't go well with you. Like trusting your intuition when it tells you, I think I want to do things differently, and just embracing that. The other one is courage, right? And like being courageous to not only create boundaries, but also being courageous to accept that sometimes you will not be okay and being okay with that, right? Like sometimes I think we romanticize this like growth journey where like it's just going to be rainbows and daisies and it's just going to be amazing. And I will tell you, when you think about peeling the layers of the onion, it can be very uncomfortable. You can have to like, because sometimes you bring up past hurts and sometimes you bring up past pains, right? And you have to be open to that awareness. Like, hey, like maybe this is going to be uncomfortable. And, letting go and just like knowing that you're uncovering a version of you, right? Because you don't want to be in the space where you think you've, gone through some stuff and then you do start doing the deeper inner work and you're like, I'm not okay with this. I I want to be okay. I want to be okay. I want to get to the finish line. That requires a lot of courage to just be open to whatever is going to open up for you. The other thing is embracing saying no. Saying no, especially when you know that saying yes is saying no to yourself, right? So being okay with saying no to people that you previously never even considered saying no to, or requests, or expectations, or demands from people. Being okay with being like, no, this is not a good fit for me right now. And that calls for a lot of courage. The third thing that we have to bring along with us on this journey is self-awareness. And self-awareness is, again, like understanding that that onion is like peeling and you're uncovering layers of yourself. So you have to stay mindful in the present moment and embracing struggle as part of evolving. And I mentioned that in the previous, in self-leadership, right? Embracing that there will be times where it will be hard. So again, going back to my trip, I remember my best friend and I were having this conversation, and it was about like our 20s, and both of us had like different struggles. And I had said something to her in passing when my daughter was little, and she had just like brought it up for clarification. And I think when I said it at the time, it was more like when we're not fully present, like it's wasted time. Or again, that was what I thought at the time, right? And the more we had that deeper conversation, it was like, no, like even then when we were not fully mindful and fully present and processing things, that was not wasted time. It was part of the journey. It was part of the growth, right? Like there's so many people who may be in relationships that haven't served them in the past. And you may have been living in that like, oh, I wasted these years of my life with this person, or I wasted these years of my life in this relationship or in this dynamic. And it's like, if you can just see the growth that came in that season, right, it wasn't wasted time. Because sometimes we think of it as like, but I should have been moving forward. There was no forward momentum. And so it was like literally a moment for me to even like, and I think we had clarified that together, but it was more like having the one-on-one conversation, like to eat my crow, like to just realize, hey, that was actually not correct, right? Like there is no wasted time when you have literally just spent time growing. And I just realized I used this colloquial idiom, and then it might not be actually like a common knowledge thing. So eating crow is actually something that means like admitting having been proven wrong after taking a strong position. But it's not really, in my position, it's not really that much. But that's just a mild version of it. So when I thought about that, I was like, yeah, it wasn't wasted time, because had it been wasted time, neither of us, in that context, her, wouldn't have been the person she was today, right? And so I even sometimes go back to like my 25-year-old self, and I just want to thank her for like reading all the books, even if she didn't understand it, because she created the knowledge base for me to grow as a person, for me to evolve, even when I wasn't evolving maybe at a faster speed than I am now. To become the complex being that I am now required that version of me to take action, required that version of me to show up strongly for me. I'm going to share another Young Pueblo quote, and it says, "Do what is right for you. Do it over and over again. Keep going even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Do not let doubt stop you. Trust the process when your mood is low. Let growth be your mission. Let healing be your reward. And let freedom be your goal." So I just want to reiterate. Keep going even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because then is when the growth is really happening, right? And trust the process when your mood is low, right? There will be times you will not want to take action. There will be times you will not want to show up in your relationships as the new version of you. And it's okay to just like remember, like, yeah, you're human. Of course, sometimes you might backslide into old habits, and that's okay. The other component of showing up and being open to evolution is self-love. And by self-love, I really just like want you to be aware that self-love is not selfishness. It's accepting yourself for who you are 100% and being okay with being imperfect. It's showing up and creating time for yourself so that you can lean into transformation. It's being open to other people about how you're feeling, being open to sharing with your vulnerable vault, being able to just tell them how you're feeling, being able to create more time and more courage to have more faith in yourself, right? And to create more time to cultivate your inner peace, to give yourself permission to just be. I'm just thinking about like before I left, I was like, I'm gonna, be on the beach and I'm going to like think up content for my, accounts and I'm going to work on my business. And I just like asked myself when I was at the coast, I was like, what do I really need? And like my intuition and my inner knowing was like, you need rest. And so I just gave my body what it needed. I just did nothing. I sat, I talked to my friends, I ate a lot, a lot, lot. I went in the water, I took walks, I took naps, I slept in, I had big meals, and I had enjoyable conversations. I never sat down to like work. I spent intentional time with my daughter and my niece and my nephew, and I was just like fully present. And old me would have probably been like, this is lost time. Like, you should be working. Even though I knew, like, I'm on vacation, I hadn't planned on like really doing serious work, right? But I was like, well, you're losing momentum in the business. And of course, that inner voice was like, girl, what are you doing? Like, write some content, post some posts, do some things. And I was like, no, my body needs rest. And so when we came back from the coast, it was 6 days in, and I was just in a space of like receiving. And I was so open to receiving whatever was coming. And the following day, the day before we left Kenya, I went to visit my great aunt, which I never called her my great aunt my whole life. I would still never call her that. But for the context of this podcast, she's my great aunt, my grandmother's sister. I always called her my grandmother. And I just remember sitting in her presence and feeling so overwhelmed with like love. And my great aunt is deaf and mute, and she is literally one of the happiest people I know. And sitting with her and just seeing how she was loving on my daughter and just being herself, right? I was reminded of what love for other people means. And for me, part of self-love is also being open to loving others wholeheartedly. And I was telling my daughter that my great aunt actually was my sister and brother's caregiver when they were little. And again, she cannot hear and she cannot speak. She also doesn't sign conventionally. So she did not go to school. So my family my grandmother had 3 sisters and 1 brother that were hearing impaired and also couldn't speak. And so our extended family had a family sign language. So they didn't go to school. One of them did actually. She did learn how to sign ASL, but the other 3 didn't. So we had like our family sign language. And I remember the morning I was leaving, I was telling myself, oh my gosh, like I can't remember a lot of the stuff, like the signs, how are we going to communicate? And we didn't have to even express ourselves like using sign. It was just like the love that was there and the love that she felt for us. And so my daughter was asking me, how was she able to be the babysitter? Like, how did she know when the babies were crying? And it goes back to intuition. Because again, she couldn't hear, but she always knew. She always knew when the babies cried. She always knew when it was time for them to like be fed. And also, I just want to like segue there. She had a very like I just believe for myself. I don't know, it's been proven or not, but she had very strong intuition. And 2, she had a very strong sense of smell and touch. Anyway, which again was very helpful when there was a little baby, because she could literally smell a dirty diaper like from a mile away. And so she just like loved on them and loved on all of us and took great care of them. And when my daughter asked me like how did she know like what we wanted to tell her or what we thought, I realized love isn't about the words that you say, right? Sometimes it's unspoken. And with my great aunt, that's what it is. It's like we just know we love her and she loves us. And like there's no double checking if it's there. It's always been there, right? So as part of self-love, I think is we have to be open to also loving other people and receiving love from other people and being honest and intentional about the spaces that we want to be in and the people we want to be with. That I think is super important because, again, like you can't be open to evolving if you're not opening to knowing yourself and knowing others. I really wanted to share those tools, those skill sets to bring with you on the journey. If you're finding yourself struggling, you've started to change, you don't know what the people in your life think of it, I just want you to give yourself permission to be okay with the people not figuring it out, to be okay with people not understanding what your journey is, to being okay with yesterday's version of you being totally different from today's version of you, to just be open to that, to understand yourself and to love yourself just the way you are, right? So it's okay if you're just discovering your authentic self. It's okay if you start changing and it makes other people uncomfortable. It's okay if your social circles change. It's okay if you've decided to take a deep dive into living life on your terms. It's okay for you to be okay with your self-concept changing. It's okay to evolve. What if evolving meant being available for the best relationships that serve you? What if evolving meant shedding the weight of toxic relationships? What if evolving meant being kind to yourself? What if it meant doing the work, healing yourself, going on the journey so that your spouse and your children could experience the highest version of your self-concept? Would you do it? Would you? If you're ready to evolve, I can help you. So you can book your Mommy Relationships Makeover consultation call with me using the link in the show notes, or go to stethoscopestoswaddles.com and let me know, if this is something that you're open to, just evolving and finding you. It's like the adult version of Finding Nemo. Like, do you want to find you, mama? Like, what would that mean for you if you showed up fully authentic and being okay with changing, being okay with starting to say no and building healthy boundaries, being okay with feeling your feelings and not buffering them with drinking, overeating, or shopping, going all out on Prime Day because you want to numb out what is actually happening, or going cuckoo crazy on the Nordstrom sale, because I've done it. Hands up, both of them guilty. Then looking at the things that came and realizing that it was a dopamine hit and I didn't even really, I liked the things, but it didn't change what I was trying to avoid feeling. And so now I'm so intentional. I'm like, I've been looking at the Nordstrom sale this year and I'm like, do I need these things? Do I want them? And if I buy them, it won't be like a huge, like middle of the night splurge, because I don't want to feel sadness or loneliness or anger or shame. It's because I want to have the things. So I want to also offer you, notice for yourself when evolving makes you uncomfortable and you run in the opposite direction because you're scared. Because it starts to mean that maybe, just maybe, who you were always meant to be isn't who you are right now. It's facing that, looking at yourself in the mirror and being okay with 100% being a brand new person and being okay with the consequence of that. Being okay by living life as who you were truly meant to be, who you always wanted to be. Like, what were the characteristics you believed you were supposed to have, and like what the highest version of you, and just checking in with yourself. Like, do I like where I am right now? And if I don't, am I going to give myself permission, no matter what, to find out who I truly, truly am supposed to be? Because that version is who you are. And then you might get to that version and go, I want to up-level this version, right? I want to be the person that like fights fair with my spouse. I want to be the person that is comfortable with people not being okay with how I'm living my life. I want to be the person that can step into new decisions with confidence and trusting myself that I'm making the right choice, right? I want to be the person that's okay with the struggle of change. And I want to be the person who, when relationships don't go the way I thought they should go, give myself grace, move on, and create room for the best relationships that are just about around the corner. I want to be the person who shows up for the little girl in me who wanted to be who I'm not today and living the dream that I created back then. So be okay with evolving. Be okay with finding yourself. Like we have this one life to live, and like the Hagia Sophia, we can be totally different things in this lifetime. So if you're struggling with like, am I changing too much or people like not liking it? This is your permission slip. It's okay to evolve. Hope you have a wonderful week. Bye now. I'm Shira Bergbauer, and you've been listening to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. New episodes are out every Monday. These episodes are created by me, Shira Bergbauer, and produced by Cassidy Mitchell. If you enjoyed this show or found it helpful, please rate it and review us on Apple Podcasts. If the concepts I share on this podcast resonate with you, or you're ready to change your relationships and mindset, I can help you. If you'd like in-depth, personalized support, I'd love to invite you to apply for my Life and Mindset coaching program. Just imagine you and I every week working together as I teach you the tools to up-level your life. To book your free 1-hour consultation call, go to www.stethoscopestoswaddles.com/consultation. You're doing a great job, Mama. Have a great week. Bye now. Thank you so much. And always remember, you're enough and you belong. Bye.